As we begin this video, please make sure to copy these lines of CSS from my repository and copy them into your index.css so that whatever we're going to be building in this video is going to behave as you would expect it to behave. The repository is linked in the description and it is called HTML CSS YT. So in this next project, we're going to be building the admin portal. And the challenge for this is going to come in the layout. So getting the layout to look like this, as well as these grids right inside here. And then on the bottom, we're going to be using an API once again to generate a random quote, and then we're going to be displaying it on the bottom. Okay, so let's get started. So once again, in my workspace, I have created a new folder by going right here and saying create a new folder, and I've called it project 8 admin dashboard. And inside here, I have imported the design file. So when you clone this repository, you're going to have the design file. And then I also have the profile.png, and the profile.png is this image right here. So right away, the first thing that I'm going to do is right click right here and create a new file called index.html. And then I'm going to create another new file called dashboard.html. So this is the first project where we're going to be linking two HTML pages, and then we're going to be toggling in between them. Because what I want to do is I want to create just a button that when you click on it, then it's going to take you into this page. Okay, and then once I create those two files, then I'm going to create a new file called styles.css, and then I'm going to create another new file called index.js. Okay, and then now I can close up this side. And in our index.html, I'm just going to say exclamation, and then I'm going to change this title into project. What project is this? Project 8. So project 8, and it's called admin dashboard. Okay, and then inside here, I'm just going to have an anchor tag that links into /dashboard.html, and I'm just going to say log in. I mean, obviously, in a real project, you want this to be like a form that you can submit and then validate the data and then check whether the user exists and then log them in and so on and so forth. And by the way, you can achieve this using Netlify. And then on top of this, I'm going to link my global index.css. So link href into /index.css. And then I'm going to link my style sheet. So link into styles.css like so. And then inside my dashboard.html, I'm going to do the same thing. So exclamation. And then I'm going to link my global /index.css. And then below this, I'm going to link styles.css, because we are just going to use one style sheet to style both pages. And then inside here, I'm going to say admin dashboard for the title. Okay, and then inside here is going to be our dashboard, but for now I'm just going to have an H1 that says dashboard. Okay, and then I'm going to save this. And then now I need to link our JavaScript. So this JavaScript file is only going to be used in the admin dashboard. So I'm going to only link it inside here, and I'm going to say index.js like so. So I'm going to go inside my index.html, and I'm going to right click and say open with live server. Okay, and when this opens up, you can see that we have a link here, and when I click on this link, it takes me into the dashboard page, and you can see that now the link shows as dashboard.html. So I'm going to go back inside here, and I want to style this link so that it comes to the center. And what I'm going to do is go inside my styles.css, and you know what, let me give this link a class name, or a class of, let's say, btn once again. And then let's access the class of btn, and then let's give it a background color of #111827. Let's give it a padding of 0.625 rem on the top and bottom, and 2 rem on the left and right. Let's say transform and scale this up to about 1.3. And then let's change the text color into white. So color into white, #FFF. Let's add a border radius. So border dash radius, change this to 0.625 rem. And then let's remove the border that it has. So border none, and then outline, set this to none as well. And then I'm going to save this, and then let's also say cursor pointer. So cursor, change this into pointer, move this downwards, and then let's access the hover state. And for the hover state, what I want to do is, you know what, let me do something different for this one. So let me change this border into 2 pixels and solid, and hashtag 111h27, so that when I hover over this, so for the hover state, I'm going to say change the background color to be transparent, and then change the text color into hashtag 111h27, and then on top of this we can say transition everything by 0.5 seconds. Okay, so let's save this and then let's see. So we're going to have this, look at that. So that is our transition. And then of course, let's remove this underline right here. So I'm just going to say for all the anchor tags, I'm going to say text decoration, set this to none. And that removes the underline. And then next I want to access this so that it moves to the center. So what I'm going to do is inside my index.html, I'm going to grab this. Let me grab this, cut it out, and then I'm going to give it a div, and this div is going to have a class of, let me see, because I don't want the classes to conflict with our dashboard, so I want to say give this div a class of what? Let's just say login button, like so, so that now I can go inside my styles.css and I can say that for the .login dash button, I can say display flex and then align item center and justify content to the center, and then give it a height of 100 viewport heights, which is going to move it to the center. There we go. So you can click on login and it's going to take you into the dashboard page, and then we can now begin working on the dashboard page. And if you're wondering, I can just say df, which means display flex, because as you can see it says emmet. So if you use emmet, you can just say display flex, and then AIC to align item center, and then JCC to justify content to the center, and then height, you can just set the height to 100 viewport heights. So once I have that, then I want to place a comment here and say dashboard page, which means right here is where we're beginning to style our dashboard page. So the first thing that I'm going to do is first remove this h1, and then I'm going to place an article here, and sorry, not an article, but an aside tag. And this aside tag is going to have a class of sidebar, like so. And then here inside this aside, we're going to have an article, and then this article is going to have an image, and the image for this is going to be from from profile.png. And then beside this image is going to be an h2 that says my name, and you can change that into anything that you want. Okay, so I'm just using this for the design. And then we're going to add another article that has these 4 items, and then this one is going to be on the end. So we're going to have another article, so article, which is going to have a UL with list items times 4, and because they are not going to be linked, so I'm just going to leave them as this. And this first one says add, remove, update, and view. Add, remove, update, so view all tasks. This is update tasks, and then remove tasks, like so. And then we're going to have another article at the end of this, and this article is going to be an anchor tag that links back into the index.html, and it's just going to say logout, which is this one right here. So now I'm going to save this, and inside our dashboard, okay, we're going to have this image which is messed up a bit, but I can click on the logout, which is at the bottom right here, and when I click on it, it takes me out into the index.html page, and then when I click on the login, it logs me back in. Okay, and then now we can style our sidebar. So let's go ahead into our sidebar. Let me access the class of sidebar, give this a background color of hashtag 111h27, and then change the text color inside into white, so FFF. And then for small screens, how do I want this to look? Let me see. First, let me limit this image. So I'm going to go into the dot sidebar, and I want just the image inside, and I'm going to set the width here into 2 rem. How small is that? Too small, so let's say 4 rem. Okay, so you know what, let's style this sidebar for desktop screens, and what I'm going to do is, let's check this out. It is inside here. We can close the index.html file. So inside the sidebar, I want to say display flex, and this is what will happen. And then I want to say flex direction, change it to column, so that they stack one on top of the other. And then I'm going to say justify content, justify oops, what am I doing? Justify content to space between. Okay, and then I'm going to set this height to 100 heights, and then this is what is going to happen. And then I want this sidebar to be limited to a certain width, so I'm going to set the width here to, let's say, 400 pixels. That's too big. Let's say 300, or let's say 350. Okay, and then we want to add a border radius, which is right here on the top right and on the bottom right. So we can do that by doing the following. You can just say border dash radius, and when you specify 4 values, then this is how the border radius is going to apply. So just like padding, this is going to be on the top left, and then on the top right, and then on the bottom right, and then on the bottom left. Okay, and if you want to do it one by one, you can just say border top left radius, and then apply it, and then do the same thing. So border top right radius, and then border bottom right radius, and then border bottom left radius. But as you can see, that is writing too much, and you can just use a shorthand property here. So border radius, set this to 0 on the top left, set it to 4rem on the top right, set it to 4rem on the bottom right, and then 0 on the bottom left. And we're going to have this. Okay, and then now what I want to do is increase the padding so that these items push inwards. So I'm going to say increase this padding to 1.5 rem. Okay, so we're going to have that. And then now I want to access this first article and display these 2 items as a flexbox. So inside the sidebar, and just going to go below this, I'm going to say for the sidebar, I want the article, which is the first child, and I'm going to say display flex, and this is going to happen. So I want this text to move to the center, and we do that by saying align item center, like so. And then inside this first child, I want to access the h2. So access the h2 here, and I'm going to say margin dash left, set this to 2 rem, push it away just a bit, let's say 1.5. Okay, and then I want to go inside this second article. So inside the second article, which is the nth child of 2, so I'm just going to copy this, paste it here, and then change this into nth child brackets 2, and I'm going to say I want to access the ul and then the list items. So that I'm going to say margin dash bottom of 1 rem, push them away from one another. So we're going to have this, and then I want to access this final one and change this link color to white. So I'm going to go inside here, and I'm going to say that for the sidebar, I want to access the article, which is the last dash child, and I'm going to say that for the anchor tag inside here, I want to change this color to hashtag FFF, which is white, and there we go. Okay, so we're going to have this as our dashboard, so we can log out, and once again we can log in. And then the next section that we're going to have is the card section, which we're going to display inside here. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that. And you know what, let me reduce this width a bit because it just looks too big, right? So let's reduce the width here to about, let's see how 200 looks like. Too small, let's say 300. Okay, 300 works much better. Okay, so let's go ahead and create one article so that we can style it out, and then we can just copy paste it for the other articles. So let's go ahead, and this is how our design looks like. So we're going to be referencing this. So inside the dashboard.html, right below the sidebar, I'm going to create a section, and this section is going to have a class of cards like so, and then we're going to have an article like so, and then this article is going to have an h2, and this h2 is going to have a span. And the reason why I'm adding a span is because I want the span to be styled differently. So these numbers are going to be the span. So this first one says 506, so 506, and then the text says lifetime tasks completed, so lifetime tasks completed. And then there's a button at the bottom that says view list. So below this we have a button, and I'm going to give this button a class of btn light, or let me say btn white, so that doesn't confuse me. And then it says view list. Okay, so this is going to be our card. So I'm going to save this and then we can style it out. So for the cards class, I'm just going to go below this. For the cards class, I want to access the article, and then this article has a background color of, this is blue, but I added an opacity to it. Let me see. Yeah, it has an opacity of 25%. So I'm going to copy this color, and I'm going to say this one is going to have a background color of this. Okay, but it needs an opacity of 25%. So let me reduce it. Wait a minute, let me just change this into RGBA, so 0.25, which is 25%. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and you'll notice that this is going to be a problem, and you're going to see why it is going to be a problem first of all. And of course, our article doesn't appear because it is technically behind this sidebar, and we're going to fix that in a moment. And you know what, we need to fix it right now because we can't continue studying it if we are not seeing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go inside the .cards class, and we're going to give this a max width of 700 pixels, and then I'm going to say margin dash left, set this to auto, so that it's going to push it inwards, or not. Oh, here it is. Okay, so here it is. So what we need to do now is we want this sidebar to be positioned absolute within the body, so that this one is going to come on top. So inside the sidebar right around here, I'm just going to add a space, and I'm going to say position this as absolute, take it to the left by 0 and to the top by 0, and there we go. So that this is going to happen now. So this is now positioned absolute, and then I want to increase, or yeah, I want to increase the margin of this so that this is going to push to the left just a bit more. So where we had this, I'm going to set this into 1300 pixels, and there we go. Let's say 1200. So this is going to be our first article. Okay, let me change this to 1250. Okay, so this is going to be our first article, and how I'm going to do this is that I'm going to place these cards to be a grid. So I'm going to say display grid with grid template columns to repeat 3 times and 1 fraction column each. So they're going to be 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5 for the 5 grids that we're going to have. And then I want these to move downwards just a bit. So I'm going to say that for the cards, I want to place a margin on top of, let's say, 10 rem, which is 160 pixels. So too big, let's say 7 rem. Okay, and then now let's style out this article to be much better looking. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a padding, and then we're going to change the styling as well. So for the article, let's go inside this article. Let's say add a padding of 1.5 rem all round. Let's add a border dash radius of 3 rem all round. See how that looks. 3 rem is too big. Let's say 2 rem. And then let's go inside this h2. So for the article h2 here, we're going to say we want to change the color of this. Let me check what this color is. 111827. Okay, so that's the color I used. So let's change the color into hashtag 111827. Okay, change it up a bit, and then let's access the span so that we can display it as a block element. So inside here, the h2 has a span. So let's say display block, and then let's change the font size. So font size, we're going to change this into about 4 rem. And then you know what, we also need to reduce the font size of this h2. So font size, reduce it to about 1.25 rem. See how that looks. Okay, and then we want this to be a lightened font. So we're going to say font dash weight, change this into normal. Okay, and then this one needs to be bolden, because if I save this, you'll see that this also changes into a lighter font. So I want to say font dash weight, change this into bold, which is going to bolden this, and this is going to remain lightened. And am I scaling something up? Why does this look big? Let me change this into 1 rem instead of 1.25 rem, or let's say 1.2 rem, 1.1. Okay, and then let's add a margin on the bottom to push it away from this button. So right inside here, we're going to say margin dash bottom of 2 rem pushed away from the button. And then let's go ahead and style this button to be white in color. And let me see how this looks. So it is white and it has a slight border. Okay, so let's go inside here, and then let's say that for the cards, for the article, I want to access the .btn-white, btn-white, and I'm going to give this a background color of hashtag white with a text color of hashtag 111827, and then I'm going to give it a padding of 0.625 rem on the top and bottom, and 1 rem on the left and right, and then add a border radius of, let's say, 1.25 rem all around. And then let's change the cursor to pointer like so. So save this, and we should see this on the screen. 2 rem is a bit too big. 2 rem is, what did I have on the border is? Oh, let's change this into 0.625 rem. Just reduce it just a bit, and then we need to remove the border. So you can remove the border, set this to none, and then the outline as well, we can set it to none, so that we're going to have this. Fantastic. And then now I want to show you another state that we can have on elements. So we're going to access this btn of white inside here, and then we're going to say that for the active state, and the active state is triggered when you click on it. Okay, so what I want to do is that for the active state, I want to say transform, and let's say scale it down to about 0.8. Okay, so when I click on it, notice that it scales down, and then when I remove click, then it is back to normal. So that's what happens on the active state. And of course, if you want to add a transition to this, you can. So you can just go up here and say transition, and transition the transform property by 0.3 seconds. And then this is going to happen, so it just slides in just a bit in and out. Okay, so this is our first article. So let's go ahead and create our second article. And you know what, actually the rest of the articles. So inside our dashboard, I'm just going to copy this article inside here and paste it inside here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to change these numbers up. So let me just get these numbers. So 8, 4, 2, and 75%. So 8, 4, 2, and 75%. Okay, and then the text is a bit different. So this says tasks completed today. So tasks completed today. This one says pending tasks today. This one next says cancelled tasks. And then the final one says of tasks completed. Of tasks completed. Change this into a capital letter. Okay, so once I save this, then you're going to notice a problem, and this is the problem right here. And I've just realized that I need to add a box shadow. Do I have a box shadow? I do. So let's add a box shadow on all the articles, and the articles are these ones right here. So let's add a box shadow, and a box shadow that we have been adding all along. So 0.2 rem on the horizontal, 0.2 rem on the vertical, 0.2 rem on the blur radius, and RGBA on the color, so 0, 0, 0, 0.2. And we're going to have this. So first of all, let's add a grid gap to separate these items out. So right where we have display grid inside here, we're going to add a grid gap of 2 rem. There we go. And you know what, I also don't want this to go all the way to the end. Like, I want this to have a spacing inside here, so I'm going to say margin right, set this to about 2 rem, push it inwards. There we go. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to use pseudo selectors to change the background colors of each one of these cards. Okay, so now instead of having the background color here, I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to go right around, actually not just below this, and I'm going to say that for the cards article, for the first child, this is going to be the background color, so that the background color only applies to this one. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second child, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, or the last child. So the second child is this color of yellow with an opacity of 45%. What? 49%, not 45. So we're going to just do the same. So I'm going to say for the cards article and nth dash child 2. And you know what, let me just copy this downwards. So 3 and 4 and 5. So this is going to be 3 and 4 and 5. And then inside here we're going to have a background color, so I need to copy this again. So background color, set it into this color, and then drag this into HCSL, or so change this into, or even RGB, and change this into 0.49, so that we're going to have this on the yellow. And then for the next one, this is blue with 58%. So inside here we have background color of this one, change this into RGB by clicking on this. So RGBA, and changing this into 0.58. And then for the fourth one, we need this red one, which is 75% opacity. So inside here, background color, set it into this, change it into RGBA to add the alpha value, change this into 0.75, and change this into RGBA. And finally, for the fifth one is this green color, which is 100%. So background dash color, changes into this. Okay, so separate this out just a bit. There we go. So I'm going to save this, and we should have this on the screen. Would you look at that? And then the text for this is white in color, right? For the text for this, so we can do that easily. But then I'm just realizing that this is readable even if this background is green. But just for the sake of uniformity in the design as well, I'm going to change this color here on the last article, change the color into white, so that we're going to have this doesn't work. It doesn't work because the declaration here is above this one, so this one has more specificity than this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to be accessing the nth child of 5. So nth child of 5, I'm going to be accessing it here first of all, and I'm going to say that for the H2, I'm going to change the color into white. So now this one has more specificity than this, which means this is going to apply on the fifth article. So I'm going to save this, and we are going to have this on the screen. And then now we're going to add our random quote generator. And for our random quotes, we're going to be using an API. And the API we're going to be using is from a GitHub repository by let me remember the name. What's his name? The API is called quote. Is it quotable or what? What's the quotable? I've forgotten the name. Okay, here it is. This is the API. Okay, so we're going to be sending a GET request. We're going to be sending a GET request to get random quotes. And this is an example. So if I try to run this in the browser, then we're going to get a random quote here with some content and then the author. And then we can add a flag here and just say tags equals to technology, so that we get technology quotes. And if you want to read more about this, then please go to this repository as well. It is by Luke PV, and the repository is called Quotable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link, and then inside our dashboard.html, right below this, so right below this section, I'm going to create another section, and this section is going to have a class of quotes, like so. And then inside this section, I'm going to have an h3, and this h3 is going to have an ID of author, okay, and it's going to be empty. And then below this, we're going to have a paragraph with an ID of quote, like so, and it's going to be empty. And for now, we can just have something like lorem2 here, and then lorem2 here as well, so that we can see it on the screen. And remember that we are not going to be able to see it first of all, because it is technically behind this aside tag, this sidebar. So what we need to do is we need to go inside this class of quotes. So inside the class of quotes, let's go inside the quotes and set a max width here of 1250 pixels like we did on top. And where is it? I can't see it. I can't see it because I need to set a margin here, so margin left of auto. Okay, so here it goes. Okay, and now what I want to do is push it away from this articles. So I'm going to say margin dash top, set this to about 3 rem. There we go. And then now we're going to send a get request using JavaScript, and then we're going to populate this. So let's go ahead inside our index.js, and then what I'm going to do is, using async and await, I'm going to create a function here. So const fetch quote, or let's say let me call this get random quote. So get random quote is equal to an asynchronous function like so. And then I'm going to say that const the response that I get back, response is equal to await fetch, and we're going to be fetching from this link right here from the API. And then I'm going to say const data, so the data that we get back is equal to await response.json, meaning convert it to JSON. And then once I get this, then I want to get my h3 with the ID of author, and then the paragraph with the ID of quote, and then I want to populate them. So I'm going to say const author is equal to document.get element by ID, and we're going to be getting the ID of author. And then I'm going to say const quote is equal to document.get element by ID, and it's called quote. And then I'm going to say author dot text content. And you know what, let me start with inner HTML. I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can populate this. So inner HTML is equal to data dot, let's get the API. So we are accessing data dot author inside here. So data dot author, okay, and then the quote dot inner HTML is equal to data dot content. There we go. And then I'm going to save this, and we should see something on the screen. Okay, so right inside here we should see something. Wait a minute, I haven't called my function. Yeah, that's it. So get random quote. So always remember to call your functions when you define them. So now we should see something on the screen, and there we go. So we have Albert Einstein, and this is the quote that he has given. Now let's style this out a bit, and remember I said that these are going to be empty, so let's remove this text. Okay, so let's go inside the styles.css, and then let's access the ID of author and the paragraph. So right below this, I'm going to say that for the ID of author, I want the font size of this to be 3 rem with a margin bottom of 1 rem. And then right inside the quotes, I want to limit the width because I don't want this to go all the way to the end. So I'm going to say set the width to about 400 pixels. Okay, that is not what I want. So I want this to align back here, and the reason why it is aligned to the left is because I have set the margin left to be auto. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say set the margin to 3 rem on the top, and then auto on the left and right, and that pushes it here. Is that correct? So something is wrong here. So 3 rem on the top, 3 rem on the top, and then we should see, I want this to, and by the way, if you're wondering, the reason why this has moved closer to this is because the scroll bar has been introduced. Okay, so if I increase this to 500 where it doesn't introduce the scroll bar, you can see now the spacing is back to normal. So now what I need to do therefore is I need to reduce this to 650. Does that help? Actually, does that help? This doesn't do anything, so we can remove this. So let's increase this to 600. Let me see how this looks. Okay, so I'm noticing something. So let's get it to 900. Okay, let's get it to 1000. So 950. Okay, 950, not 9500. And there we go. So 950 just styles it just enough so that it's like this. And then what do we need to do? Probably just change this color into the same color as these other ones. So let's go inside our HTML, our CSS, sorry, and then we can change this into a color of hashtag 111827. And then now I want to access the class of quote and change the font size of this to be 0.9 rem, and I want to reduce this as well into 2.5 rem. So one thing that you can add is to change these quotes after a fixed amount of time, right? because the only way that this is going to reload now is by logging out and then logging back in, which is going to generate another quote. So let me show you how you can do that. You can go inside your JavaScript inside here, and then we can grab this function, and then I'm going to say set interval. So set interval, and what set interval does is that it performs a certain action after a certain time period has passed. So what I want to do is I want to call this function called get random quote, and I want to call it every, let's say 30 seconds, which is 30,000 milliseconds. So I'm going to save this, and we should see we don't see anything. Oh, we don't see anything because this function hasn't run yet, and it's only going to run when 30 seconds have passed. So if I change this into 1 second, which is 1,000 milliseconds, then we're going to see a quote here, and then another one, and then another one, and another one. So we want this to run every 30 seconds, which is 30,000 milliseconds, but we want it to run first of all. So get random quote, we want it to run at least once so that we get something on the screen, and then after 30 seconds, then it's going to run again, and then it's going to get another quote, and then it's going to display it right here. So I'm going to fast forward for 30 seconds, and then you will see another quote. Okay, and did you see that after 30 seconds, then it ran another get request, and then it displayed it here. Okay, fantastic. So you'll notice something, and what you'll notice is that I have not built the mobile version for this, and I've only built the desktop version. That is because building the mobile version is going to be your challenge for this project, and I hope to see what you come up with, and you can tag me on Twitter once you complete it. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and ring the notification bell so that you're always going to be notified of when I upload a new video.